Hi all, thanks very much for joining me. Now, last time we looked at some of the inventions of the Industrial Revolution and how they changed the way that people work. Now, today I want to look at the impact of the Industrial Revolution. Specifically, how does it change work for a certain group of people? And we're going to look at how the Industrial Revolution changes the lives of children. Now, parents and families had always sought ways to find work for the children. It would be a way that they could bring money into the house, that they could help feed and clothe the family. So before the Industrial Revolution, children mainly worked on farms, but following the Industrial Revolution, they worked in factories. So today we're going to look at the impact of that change. Now, I've shown you a picture, and it's an illustration from a book. The book's called The Life and Adventures of Michael Armstrong, Factory Boy, and it's by Francis Trollope, and it was written in 1840. It was accurate. It contained detail about the life of an orphan who lived in a factory. But the picture is an artist's impression. They didn't have cameras at the time, so this artist has drawn what they think life in a factory would be like based on the accounts of other people. So what I want you to do, I want you to press pause on the video, and I want you to try and identify ways that the artist has shown suffering for small children in the factory. So don't forget to press pause now. Now hopefully you've identified 2 or 3 ways that the artist has shown it, this suffering for children. Now the first one could be the dirty and torn clothing of the children. It's not very nice, it's not very tidy. It's not the kind of clothing you'd like to be wearing. Also, you can see that the children and the other people aren't wearing shoes in the factory. Now, there is a reason for that, to be honest. Quite often shoes in those days would have pieces of metal underneath to keep the sole in place. That would sometimes spark against other metal on the floor, and it could cause a fire. So they weren't allowed to wear shoes. But they didn't even wear socks. They had nothing on their feet to make them feel comfortable. The work's quite dangerous. We can see a small child crawling out from underneath a machine that is still working. So it's dangerous. There's a lot of risk of injury. And the children are underfed. We can see they look quite thin. Now I've put there a word as well in brackets, malnourished. So if you've written the word underfed, I want you to make sure that you put malnourished as well. They mean the same thing, but malnourished, it's a better word to use to describe this. So today we're going to look at 3 key changes for children: the age of starting work, working hours, and working conditions. Now to help us with our notes, what I want you to do is I want you to create a table. And I've shown you the table in front of you so we can see along the top those 3 titles: age of starting work, working hours, and working conditions. And we're going to look at 3 case studies. We're going to look at somebody called Edward, who's a farm worker, Janet, who works in a coal mine, and Harry, who works in a cotton factory. And we're going to see what they have to say about each of the topics we are going to be learning about. So press pause and create the table in your notes. And then once you've done that, carry on. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is the age of starting work. So let's have a look at what our 3 case studies have to say. Well, Edward, he says, I started work on the farm at the age of 8, scaring birds off the seed in the fields. This work only lasted for the spring months, and then I would go to school or help in the home. It was not difficult work. I started working full-time on the farm when I was 12. So press pause, add some information to the table that you've created, and then we'll move on to the next one. Now the next one's Janet. Janet works in a coal mine, and she says, I started working in the mine when I was 6. My parents pretended I was 7 to get me work early. I worked as a coal bearer. This means I carry large pieces of coal from the coal face. So what I want you to do, press pause again and add some information to that table. And then finally we're going to look at Harry, and he works in a cotton mill. Let's see what he's got to say. In Manchester, It is easy for parents to find work for their children. I started work in the mill at the age of 6. I started as a scavenger. I crawl under the spinning machines to clean out the dirt and dust. It can be dangerous because they keep the machines working whilst I am under them. So press pause again and add that last bit of information to your table. Now hopefully your table looks something like this. So have a quick look and compare the two. And if you think you need to change your table, that's fine. Just press pause and change your table so it looks a little bit more like the one you've got in front of you now. Now something to consider at this point. Why do you think children in industrial areas, such as the coal mine and the cotton factory, started work at a younger age than those in the countryside? Why do you think that is? Just spend a couple of moments trying to think about that, and then we'll carry on to the next topic. So we're going to start thinking about working hours next, and we've got our 3 case studies. I'm not going to talk through them this time. We're just going to bring each one up. You need to press pause and you need to add to your table. So the first one we've got Edward. He works on a farm. So you need to press pause now on the video whilst you read what Edward has to say and then add that to your table. So I'm going to give you a couple of moments to do that. Now we're going to move on to Janet, and in a similar way I want you to read what she's got to say and add the information to the table. So press pause and spend a few moments doing that. And then finally we're going to look at Harry, and I want you to do the exact same thing. Read what he's got to say, press pause and add that information to your table. So I've got a question for you at the end of this then. What was the impact of the Industrial Revolution on the working hours of children? Spend a few moments thinking about that, and then we're going to move on to that final topic. And we're going to look at the working conditions for children. So we're going to start again with Edward. Read what he's got to say and add that to your table. I'm going to give you a couple of moments to do that. Next, we're going to move on to Janet. Don't forget to press pause, read what she's got to say and add it to your table. And then finally, we're going to look at what Harry's got to say. So once again, press pause and add that information to your table. So what dangers do you think children face in the mines and factories? Give that some thought, and then finally we're going to move on to the last piece of the lesson. Now today's assignment, this is the piece of work you're going to be completing and handing back in. I want you to use your notes now to write a paragraph explaining how the Industrial Revolution changed the working lives of children. So we're going to be bringing in all these different ideas about working hours, about working conditions, and about the age that children started work. Now I've given you a sentence starter. I've started it with the Industrial Revolution was a disaster for the working lives of children. Evidence of this is, and now that's your opportunity to carry on. I want you to try and give at least 2 pieces of evidence. And remember, use point, evidence, explain for your answer. If you've got any questions, drop me a line, get in touch with me. Other than that, looking forward to seeing your work. Thanks very much.